Hello students, in this our discussion on different topics of India with its relation with other countries of the world. So, we will start with today's topic will be India-Pakistan relation. As you know, that is the most important aspect in our foreign policy is how to maintain good relationship with immediate neighbors, because since independence the government has been trying to maintain friendly relationship with all the countries in general and in the neighborhood, especially with the neighborhoods. And when the present Modi government came to power, we have a policy of neighborhood first. So, the present government has highlighted on strengthening and maintaining good relationship with immediate neighbors, because we can not change our neighbors. So, it is a very common factor that we can change our friends, but we cannot change our neighbors, because neighbors are there and we do not have the capability to change them, because they share the borders with us. We cannot change them. So, it is better to be in friendly relationship with the neighbors for the development of our own country as well as improvement of our stature around the world. Okay, so a friendly neighbor and a friendly neighborhood is always important for a country's progress, its prosperity, its international image. And in this light, so we will take one of the most controversial relationship that we have with our neighborhood, that is Pakistan. Fine. Since the beginning of the creation of both the countries, the relationship is not that good among the two. Fine. So India and Pakistan are two countries united by history but divided by destiny, because as you know that the British India, the empire of the British India encompassed both India and Pakistan as British Indian territory. But the partition plan before the independence act was dividing the countries on the two nation theory. So, the two countries were created, the Dominion of India. So, that the partition plan led to the creation of two countries. So, what they are? The Dominion of India, it will be the Dominion of India and that of Pakistan, with the princely states given the option either to join India or Pakistan. So, the two countries were united by history, as it is called very well, but they are divided by destiny. So, one country which was under the British India, so as India, so divided into two dominions, Dominion of India and Pakistan, and both became independent. And so, both have since the creation of the two countries, so there is animosity between the two, and that animosity is continuing till date, even after 75 years of independence. So, both the countries have not reached a level where they can live peacefully in a good friendly relationship. That is why, so we will discuss this, what are the factors that led to this relationship being so strained from the beginning. Fine. Both have fought 3 declared wars and 1 undeclared war at Kargil, and issue which remains still unresolved. So, the wars, the direct war or that proxy wars or undeclared wars that we have fought since independence, but the issues remain unresolved. Although we have fought the wars, but the issue over which we have fought the war remain unresolved till date or till today. Fine. At present, the bilateral relations is at its lowest point since independence, as India has made it stand very rigid after the terror attack and the surgical strike that. So, that no relationship with Pakistan unless Pakistan abjure violence, restrict the terrorists, cut off all its links and support to them, and come for discussion. So, India will not establish any diplomatic relationship with Pakistan nor progress on any domain between the two will be there unless Pakistan clean its hand of terrorism and the state sponsored terrorism act, which it has been doing since it has failed thrice in frontal war with India. Fine. So, this is the at present, the present situation is such that, so the relationship between the two sides is at its lowest point since the country became independent in 1947. Fine. So, let us see, so what are the issues over which they have fought. Fine. you see the major disputes between the two countries. So why two countries who were one under the British India and divided as per the two nation theory and became two separate independent country, why they can't live in peace since the beginning? Because their intention to get separated was fulfilled and two nations were created, both became independent, both declared their own autonomy and independence. If both independent countries were created, then why from the very beginning they are unable to maintain that cordial relationship and live in peace for ensuring security of its territory of both the countries and a peaceful developed country, so on both the sides. Fine. So major issue of dispute between the two sides, India and Pakistan, includes the most important one or the issue of Kashmir. As you all know, so the relationship between the two sides, they revolve around the question K. So the K factor, as it is known as, but the K factor is the most important point where no one is willing to compromise an inch. So the dispute continued. Every discussion since the country became independent revolved around Kashmir. They start with Kashmir and end with Kashmir because none is able to go beyond it. So Kashmir has emerged as a black hole in India-Pak relation, which all other attempt to diffuse the tension has been nullified, because this Kashmir black hole has dragged everyone beneath it. Fine. So what this issue was? So you know, Kashmir, when the Britishers left India and they divided the British Indian territory into the dominion of India and Pakistan, so they left the princely states, okay, whose number is more than 500, and the princely states were given the option either to join India or Pakistan or declare independence. Fine, three options are given. They can join the princely states who are ruled by the respective rulers. So they can join either India or Pakistan or declare independence. Fine. And because you know, India and Pakistan are created on religious ground, Hindu majority area in India and Pakistan majority, Muslim majority area went to Pakistan. So accordingly the princely states have given the option either they decide let them join India or Pakistan or declare independence. Almost all except Jammu Kashmir, Junagadh and Hyderabad. So they remain rigid in joining either India or Pakistan. Subsequently Hyderabad and Junagadh merged with India, but Kashmir was very reluctant to join either India or Pakistan. So Maharaja Hari Singh, the then ruler of Kashmir, so he was very reluctant to join either India or Pakistan. Fine. But Pakistan has a desire that Kashmir, being a Muslim majority area, should automatically go to Pakistan, because the nations were created on this religious ground. When the majority people are Muslim, so obviously that area should go to Pakistan. But when that dream remained unfulfilled, so the Pakistan authority, with the support of the Pakistan military, they started launching tribal invasion inside the territory of Maharaja Hari Singh of Kashmir. The Maharaja was unable to control that or face it, so he appealed for Indian help, and India compelled him to sign the instrument of accession. So to be a part of Indian territory, then Indian help will be forthcoming to it. So the Maharaja Hari Singh has to sign the instrument of accession. What he had to sign? So he had to sign the instrument of accession. Instrument of accession. To India. Then once Maharaja Hari Singh signed this, so Indian army came to his rescue and the Pakistan invaders, they are pushed back. Fine. But since that day, so the animosity developed and we have fought wars. So there is war between India and Pakistan many times. So 3 wars, declared one and one undeclared at Kargil, and a part of India or part of Kashmir called the POK or Pak occupied Kashmir. POK. So it has been taken by Pakistan. Okay. So this, after this situation, we have international the issue. So India has brought this to United Nations, and United Nations called for a referendum, okay, a plebiscite to be held in Kashmir to know the mindset of the people, and that plebiscite remained means it's remain unimplemented till date, and Kashmir remain the most controversial issue between India and Pakistan. So the wars that we have fought in the past between India and Pakistan was over Kashmir. We have fought 3 wars, and in between, so lot of water has been flown in the rivers between the two sides, but the issue remain unresolved. Fine. So Kashmir was, it is, and hopefully it will remain the most controversial issue between the two countries, over which none is willing to compromise, and so no development in relationship, because it is the biggest. So it is called Kashmir remain the biggest black hole between the relationship between India and Pakistan. Fine. So this is the issue of Kashmir, and that dispute is as active as it was in 1947. Fine. Rather, the situation has aggravated more with passage of time. So this is the Kashmir issue. Fine. And coming to the second one, the second issue is regarding peace and security. You see, so both the country, when they have not friendly in relationship, there is security threat perception between the two, and both the country started an arms race, acquiring weapons, and both the country became nuclear power countries. Fine. Because both India and Pakistan have tested nuclear weapons and have upgraded their armory. So both the army, navy and air force of both the country have strengthened themselves with indigenous production as well as purchasing sophisticated weapons from abroad, like that Pakistan getting the things from America, India getting them from Russia, and right now both the country are acquiring more and more sophisticated weapons to their stockpiling from indigenous research, development as well as from importing from abroad. Fine. So that F-16 as called the most sophisticated fighter plane with the possession of Pakistan led India to go for the Rafale deal with France, by which we get the Rafale fighter planes. Fine. So peace and security remain another area of contention between the two sides, because both the country started developing their own armory, developing their security situation, and they go on adding to their stockpiling of weapons, including conventional and non-conventional as well as nuclear warheads to the stockpile. And so both being nuclear weapon countries, this threat perception has aggravated more than it was in 1947. So peace and security, the security threat, and always Pakistan's threat to India, that so India will be attacked with nuclear weapon if war breaks out between the two sides, has vitiated the atmosphere and the security perception for India, as well as India's acquiring more and more weapons has created insecurity in the mind of the Pakistani establishment. So peace and security, including nuclear weapons, remain the next area of dispute between the two, and that has led to creation of suspicion, that has led to the creation of that animosity, and that has led to the lack of trust, or the what is called the trust deficit between the two sides. So that is the second point. And coming to the third one, what is the third issue here? The third issue between the two sides is the cross-border terrorism. But this is, you know, that one is terrorism, one is cross-border terrorism. So cross-border terrorism is when terrorism is promoted in one country by active participation of another country. It is called terrorism promoted across the border, so called cross-border terrorism. So after fighting or being defeated in frontal war thrice and in the proxy war, so Pakistan started launching terrorism, which is called the proxy war by Pakistan. So terrorism from across the border being promoted in India is called the proxy war. What it is called as proxy war. Proxy war, because the army is not directly involved in any war, but the army is supporting a group, so the terrorist group, so patronizing them, helping them with arms and weapons, with all the logistics, with the training, and that led to them becoming powerful and think that yes, we can attack on Indian targets. So cross-border terrorism and promoting, financing the terrorist group like Jaise Muhammad, Lashkar-e-Toiba, Al-Qaeda, Taliban, etc. And for this, you know, so promoting terrorism is well known, that Pakistan as a promoter of terrorism is well known to the global community, for which, if you know this, I hope that you know that the FATF, the Financial Action Task Force, okay, which is a G7 initiative, okay, so with the headquarter at OECD, being run from the OECD. So they have put Pakistan in the grey list for patronizing terrorism and terror funding activity. So its support to cross-border terrorism is not only known to India but also to the global community, and this has been manifested many times when the terrorists supported by Pakistan attack Indian Parliament, the Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir, the Khardam Temple, Indian Institute of Science, the Mumbai terror blast, and even the recent Pathankot Uri attack. So all these are clear manifestations of how the country will be able to check that or promote terrorism in another country. So by which the other countries total security scenario has underwent a big change, fine, okay. So that is what is the issue of terrorism, and this issue has been highlighted by India because so if any country in the world is the worst sufferer of terrorism, it is India. So it has been clearly known to the global community that India is the worst sufferer of terrorism in the world, and India has been highlighting that cross-border terrorism, so emanating from Pakistan soil with the active support of the Pakistan establishment, has caused maximum security threat to India, but it remains unheard, unattended by the international community. So this is what, and India has been targeted at many places. So it is so called that not a single place in India is safe from the terror threat. So that's why it has led India to strengthen its security situation, security infrastructure, because cross-border terrorism has emerged as the biggest challenge for the Indian security establishment. So in the past, so many mushrooming growth of the Islamic terrorist group who have been promoted, financed, supported by the Pakistan establishment, their number has increased, and so many have been arrested. So many, you can see in the Mumbai terror attack case, the arrest of Kasab. So the sole surviving terrorist who survived, and everything was proven in that in the investigation that yes, he was from Pakistan, his active link with Pakistan, patronized by Pakistan, supported by Pakistan, and so the entire movement of the group who came to attack India were monitored and directed from across the border. So in the recent attack on Indian military establishment, Uri, Pathankot, and the most recent one, the attack on the air force stations by drone in Kashmir, are the instances when the terrorist groups patronized by Pakistan are trying to destabilize the Indian establishment or create threat perception in Indian mind. Okay, so when they are able to bleed us, so but we have tried our best to maintain relationship, and right now it became very rigid that blood and discussion cannot continue simultaneously. When you bleed us, we cannot continue discussion with you on a proactive manner. So that is why cross-border terrorism is another major irritation between the two sides. So after cross-border terrorism, the another factor which has strained the relationship is Pakistan's active support to drug trafficking in India, narcotics. So drugs here means narcotics. So Afghanistan is a place where there is huge cultivation of narcotics, banned substances, and their process in the Afghanistan-Pakistan border. So through Pakistan, they are pushed to India. Fine, and that is a major source of income to finance the terror activities inside India. So the drug money is used for terror financing. So the huge amount earned through drug trafficking is used for terror funding. Or terror financing. So we have our that Narcotic Control Bureau, we have our agencies who have looking after this, but we have so seizures of these contrabands many times have taken place in India, but this drug trafficking is a lucrative business which harm India in many ways, so that after much discussions nothing substantial has taken place in this domain. So the relationship have been affected between the two countries because Pakistan is somehow directly involved in trafficking drugs inside India. That is the issue of drug trafficking. So pushing the contrabands inside India and from India, so selling it to other countries, thereby making it a lucrative business to finance terrorism. Okay, then comes, so two more specific regions that remain disputes between the two sides. One is Siachen. You know, the boundary commission between India and Pakistan, which was known as the Red Cliff Boundary Commission, appointed by the Britishers. It has not demarcated the Siachen biggest no man's land. It is a glacier area. So, but subsequently in the 1980s, so to the utter surprise of Indian establishment, military forces, it was located that, so there are number of infiltrators. The Pakistani army has occupied the Siachen glacier. That led government of India to launch Operation Meghdoot in 1984. Remember this? So this was the operation launched to flush back the Pakistan military from the Siachen glacier, was known as Operation Meghdoot, which was launched by Indian military in 1984, and India succeeded in that. So since that day, India has to maintain army picket or army position in the snow-laden high altitude warfield of the world, that is called the Siachen warfield. So this Siachen warfield is the highest altitude warfield in the world. It is the most costliest warfield in the world, and it is the most casualty prone warfield in the world, where the number of soldiers who have died, number is more by natural calamity than by enemy fire. So many Indian soldiers have sacrificed their life in Siachen guarding the Indian border. So by natural calamity like avalanche than by the fire of the enemy forces. So that, but still, so to maintain India's sovereignty and territorial integrity, India has been maintaining the military presence in Siachen since that day. Fine. And the second one was Sar Creek. This is a waterlogged area in the Rann of Kutch of Gujarat. Fine. This Sar Creek area has also not been demarcated by the boundary commission, being a waterlogged area. But subsequently, the strategic importance of Sar Creek was identified, and both the sides started disputed claims over it. Fine. And that remained another dispute. So the whose right is over the Sar Creek water body. So that is why again the dispute get aggravated with the two sides when they claim to Sar Creek, and so they are unable to find a solution to it. But subsequently the boundary commission, the joint survey, etc. were done on Sar Creek, and to some extent it has been resolved. Fine. And coming to the next one is the water sharing issue. Fine. So although we have demarcated the area, fine, divided the one country to two and subsequently to three, but water body, the natural water body or the rivers, so they are naturally created, so they cannot be demarcated. Fine. So this is India, I will not go to Pakistan, this is Pakistan, I will not come to India. That cannot be done by the rivers. Fine. So there are 6 major rivers, so which are flowing between the two sides. So originating in India and flowing to Pakistan and ultimately draining. So that's called the water sharing things. So what are the 6 rivers? So 6 major rivers are Indus, Chenab, Jhelum, Satluj, Ravi and Bij. So 6 major rivers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there is dispute over this because so subsequently the country tried to have more demand over waters. So this issue led to the signing of the Indus Water Treaty in 1960 under World Bank mediation. So who mediated? The World Bank. The World Bank mediated in the Indus Water Treaty, and it was signed between the two sides in 1960s. Fine. As per the Indus Water Treaty, the rivers were divided between the two countries, like the west flowing rivers. These 3 are the west flowing rivers. They were given to Pakistan, and these 3 the east flowing one, they are the east flowing. Were given to India, with India's right over these three river water to some 20% of the water can be used by India. Fine. So somehow the water dispute was resolved, but some project by India in subsequent period as per the agreement has been opposed by Pakistan. That means amidst the Indus Water Treaty, the dispute between the two sides remain alive even today. And in the after the recent incident of attack on Indian military post at Uri, Pathankot, and in the situation of deteriorating relation, so India has made very clear that blood and water cannot flow simultaneously. So if Pakistan continue to have this nefarious activity, so we will review the Indus Water Treaty and will not drain or not allow the water of this Indus system to Pakistan. So this is the third perception, that there is a threat you can say by India, but to create awareness in the mind of the Pakistani establishment that if Pakistan is not restraining itself from its nefarious design, so India has the ultimate option to check the flow of water to Pakistan, which will put them in much hardship. Fine. This is the Indus Water Treaty. Indus Water Treaty, for information, is a World Bank mediated treaty, because World Bank mediated for signing this treaty. It was signed in 1960, and as per the condition, the three west flowing rivers Indus, Chenab and Jhelum are given to Pakistan, and the three east flowing rivers like Satluj, Ravi and Beach are given to India, and there is a commission, river water commission, so which will be monitoring this, what is the flow of water through this in the lean season and in the peak season, that has been clearly demarcated, and how much water of these three rivers India can use, it has been clearly mentioned. And with all these clearly codified things, still the dispute remain, because Pakistan always try to make the issue when India started some project over the assigned part on these three rivers. Fine. This is the Indus Water Treaty and the water dispute. Friends, so let's see the next one is the economic issue. You know, neighbors have a good relationship on trade normally. So one is a producer of one item, something is produced in another country. Being neighbor, they can export and import. So both are member of SAARC, South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, and its trade bloc called SAFTA, South Asian Free Trade Agreement. But although both are member of SAFTA, but there is lack of any common trade policy between the two. Fine, there is no coherence. Rather, the Indian means trade policy is always opposed by Pakistan as bullish, as not compatible, and at a cost to the Pakistan trade. So the trade relationship and economic issue between the two sides are not cordial between the two sides. So these are the major issues to which the most important being Kashmir that remain unresolved, and all other issues have been pushed to the background because Kashmir remain the biggest challenge between the two countries. There is some development that has taken place, so in resolving this issue, which we are going to discuss in the subsequent slides. Fine, let's see what steps have been taken in this direction. So major initiative taken. So you see, although both the country are not that friendly in relationship, but attempt to peace, attempt to resolve the issue. So there is constantly in process. So government after government in both the sides, they have tried their best to resolve these issues through negotiations, bilateral talk. Fine. Similar agreement was signed by which both the sides agreed that all dispute between the two sides will be resolved through bilateral talk without the third party mediation. You know, clearly remember this, because as per the similar agreement signed between India and Pakistan, it has been clearly decided that any dispute between the two sides will be resolved by bilateral discussion without any third party mediation. That means, so any dispute between the two, so to be discussed between the two sides, India and Pakistan, and they will find the resolution to resolve the issue. So on the Kashmir issue brought before the United Nations still unresolved, and the POK issue. See, Kashmir issue was brought before United Nations by India, Pandit Nehru, the then Prime Minister of India, so brought it to the United Nations, and United Nations asked for a plebiscite in Kashmir. So to know the mindset of the people there, mentality or the wish of the people there, and the plebiscite has not yet taken place. So India have a legitimate claim over Kashmir because Maharaja Hari Singh, the ruler of Kashmir, he has signed the Instrument of Accession with India and made it part of Indian territory. Okay, so and in the war, the POK, Pak occupied Kashmir, which was taken by Pakistan and has been forcefully occupied by it till today. So that remains another issue between the two. Okay, composite dialogue process was launched in 1990s. Fine. So government of both the sides, so they decided to launch a composite dialogue process. That means, so 2 plus 6 formula. Watch, it is the formula. That means, so the issue of Kashmir and the issue of peace and security will be resolved at the top level of Prime Minister, the Foreign Minister or the Foreign Secretary. And the 6 other issues like the water dispute, trade issues, terrorism, so Siachen, SARC Creek, etc. will resolve at the respective ministry or departmental level. So, through this composite dialogue process, both the sides agreed to launch parallel discussion on all the issues, because the earlier attempt to start any discussion start with Kashmir and they are unable to go beyond that. So in the composite dialogue process, they decided let start parallel discussion on all the issues, because with the hope that the less controversial issue may be resolved through some compromise, and if the less controversial issues can be resolved, that may facilitate ultimately to resolve the most important issue called the issue of Kashmir. So with this hope, both the sides launched the composite dialogue process in the 1990s, and in this they have also launched the confidence building measures. So what is this? So visit of eminent persons, parliamentarians, media persons, intellectuals, okay. So tourist on religious ground. So these are allowed by the two sides. So because so composite dialogue process will be supplemented by the confidence building measures when people to people interaction will be strengthened. So there is a Lahore bus diplomacy during Vajpayee's premiership. When Atal Bihari Vajpayee was the Prime Minister of India, so he started the bus diplomacy called the Lahore bus trip. Okay, so through the bus, the Wagah border, so Indian Prime Minister crossed over to Pakistan, and there is much attention from both the sides and much expectation also that the relationship is going to improve for future. But on the sideline of this Lahore bus journey, so there is attack in the Kargil war. Fine. So that is what, and the Agra summit took place when Musharraf was the Prime Minister. And although he was the military dictator, so India recognized him as a legitimate Pakistan president. So to facilitate that, so both the sides will find some solution to the long-standing disputes, and the Agra summit will be bring some positive result. But it was a failure because both the sides are unable to sign the final summit or agreement at Agra. Then launching of bus, train and ferry services. So to build or to develop people to people interaction, so both the sides, India and Pakistan, they have launched bus services, they have launched train services, the Samjhauta Express, they have launched ferry services. So both bus, train and ferry services are launched. So to enhance the people to people interaction between the two sides. So these attempts have been made. We cannot say that in the past the leaders of both the sides remain silent spectator or mute spectator to the developments without launching any step to improve the relationship. They have taken many steps, but all the steps have been made futile. So by the attempt of an establishment in Pakistan which don't want relationship should be cordial. Then invitation to the Prime Minister Modi swearing in the ceremony to the Prime Minister. So on the neighborhood first policy of India, when Modi came to power, so his approach was neighborhood first. That means our Prime Minister put emphasis on the neighboring country, and the neighborhood first policy is the policy of the present government where it want to first strengthen its relationship with our immediate neighbors. So all these are the attempts made. So you see, starting from the days of that Indira Gandhi, Shimla Agreement, then to Rajiv Gandhi and Benazir Bhutto on the both the sides, Bajpayee's famous Lahore bus trip, and Modi's invitation to Nawaz Sharif in the swearing-in ceremony and exchange of gifts between the two sides. So there is expectation, some sort of good wishes that yes, the relationship will improve in future, but everything has been nullified because a section in Pakistan establishment, they don't want that the country should have cordial relationship because their own interest will be affected by that. That has led to deterioration in the relationship. See what next. So what is the major irritation? So what remain, what are the issues for which so they are unable to resolve? First is declared undeclared war 1947. See, we fought the wars in 47, in 65, in 71, and the undeclared war called the Kargil war 1991. The three are declared wars. This is the undeclared war, but still issue remain unresolved. Then support to terrorists and terror group. So like the Masood Azhar case where we want to brand him as a terrorist, whereas China with Chinese support, so they are able to block it at the United Nations Security Council. So there is another irritation. So Mumbai terror attack and the Kasab issue that remain the big issue. Uri and Pathankot attack in 2016, attack on Indian military stations at Uri and Pathankot by the Pakistan sponsored terrorists. A surgical strike by India on terror launch pads in Pakistan. So after these two attacks in Uri and Pathankot, so India launched surgical strikes and destroyed the terror launch pads inside POK. So with much restraint touching the Pakistan territory, we have launched air strikes, surgical strike inside the POK to destroy the terror launch pad, a training post of the terrorists inside POK. Then the border skirmishes continues at regular interval. So Balakot air strike in 2019, Kulbhushan Jadhav case where so that ICJ verdict is an Indian victory. The Kulbhushan Jadhav was a ex-Indian military personnel, has been arrested on false charges and he has been labelled as Indian spy and has been given the death penalty, to which India appealed at ICJ, and the ICJ verdict restrained him, the Pakistan authority, from executing him, and the case is continuing. Then abrogation of Article 70 and the restructuring Jammu and Kashmir. You see, Government of India has taken a very bold decision because Kashmir was the rulers and the issue of accession, but since that day Kashmir was not a fully integral part of India. But one major strike by Government of India to abrogate Article 370 so made Kashmir an integral part. It is like any other part of India right now, and that was another area where Pakistan raised its voice against it, and it was able to mobilize other countries who expressed or supported Pakistan that Kashmir should not, this article should not be separated, abrogated, and Kashmir should not be united with India or merged with India like any other states. So that is another area, and the recent restructuring in Jammu and Kashmir, dividing the state to two union territories and bringing it under the direct central control of the Government of India. So and launching development is an issue which is not being digested well by Pakistan establishment. Then isolating Pakistan, we are succeeded in isolating Pakistan internationally, and we are able to put it or expose its nefarious design of promoting terrorism to the global community, for which so everyone right now know that Pakistan is a country which has been promoting terrorism, patronizing terrorism, supporting terrorism, funding terrorism, and that is why the FATF, as I told, the Financial Action Task Force has put it under the grey list and threaten it to take it to the blacklist if this activity remain unchanged. Then, so at present, India has a very rigid posture on Kashmir. Blood and water cannot flow simultaneously. When you continue to attack on Indian targets, we cannot allow you to maintain good relations. Even try to maintain any cordial or any diplomatic relations with Pakistan. That is what the present rigid postures by the Indian establishment that led, you can say, this is the period when the government for the first time, the Government of India for the first time has made its stand very clear that we are not going to start any discussion with Pakistan unless Pakistan clean its hand of terrorism. That is what is the present posture, and we are very rigid on this for the last 2 years. More than 2 years, Government of India is very rigid on this, that we will not proceed further or even do any attempt to normal relationship unless Pakistan clean its hand of terrorists. And second thing, we are trying all our best to isolate Pakistan internationally by exposing its nefarious design, its nefarious intention, and its attempt to promote terrorism inside India, to create instability in Indian establishment. Fine, because it's proxy war by the Pakistan authority inside India to stop. And this position we have made very clear to Pakistan as well as to the international community. Even we have rejected any initiative, even the ex-American president. So he tried to mediate between the two sides. We politely denied that any discussion between the two sides will be as per the similar agreement provisions of bilateral discussion without any third party mediation. So that led Donald Trump to remain aloof from this. So we have made our position very strong. The recent attack and the Indian strike, surgical strike, has made India to make it stand very rigid on isolating Pakistan and exposing its reality before the international community. We are able to isolate it at different forums, including SAARC. We are able to isolate it with the international community in many different forums. So that is where we can say Indian diplomacy has succeeded in its design or its noble intention to expose Pakistan, isolate it, and compel it to come for negotiations after renouncing violence, renouncing promoting terrorism. So with this hope that in future Pakistan will realize its mistake and will one day think of developing good relationship with India. So with this hope that let's complete our discussion today, and some questions which can become on this topic, like trace the relationship between India and Pakistan since independence. So what are the major disputes between India and Pakistan? So as we have discussed it, discuss different steps taken by both the sides to improve the relationship from the composite dialogue process to confidential measures like that. India-Pakistan relations at present is at its lowest ebb since independence, elucidate. So how the recent attack on Indian military targets has made India to strengthen its position and be very rigid in its posture. That is to be highlighted here. Friends, our discussion on this important issue might have definitely enriched yourself to take this topic in your examination with confidence. Thank you for watching this. Thank you again.